Okay, so we're going to run through a bit of a mock study, as you might do with a friend. John here is going to be my friend, and for the time being at least. And we're just going to show you really the basics of what it is to walk through somebody through the first session of the Word One-to-One. Each of the people that you meet are going to be slightly different, and you're going to have a slightly different personality and perhaps tone and approach to what I have. But that's okay. Just be yourself. But hopefully I'll show you how I've done it, and it might help you and give you confidence to be able to do it with friends. You'll notice that we've both got book one. That's all we've got. We don't need any more at the moment. We don't have our Bibles set out because the Bible's in here. So at this stage, I'm meeting John in his workplace, and I've handed him the book. He knows what it's all about. And we're going to get started. So, John, thanks so much for meeting up. Shall we get started and have a look? This is the first book of the first series. So let's have a look. If you turn to pages 6 and 7, and we'll begin walking through it. Hopefully, as you'll see, as we turn over, everything's there. So you won't be put on the spot. I'm not going to ask you tough questions, but we'll just read through it together. And then I'll perhaps keep breaking up and saying, okay, have you got any questions? So feel free to interrupt as well if you think I just don't get it. So, okay, so this opening page, it's John's overview right at the start of John's Gospel, and it's where God comes to earth. Okay, and as it says here in this little yellow box, there's a lot in this section at the start. So don't be surprised getting used to names and places and these sorts of things. It'll take some unpacking, but nothing stressful there. What may surprise you though is, as it says here, we're not starting with the baby Jesus, angels, Bethlehem, etc. Okay, we're starting a different place.
Like Christmas story.
Yeah, we're starting somewhere else. So should we see where we start? These first 5 verses are the first, on the left-hand side, are the first 5 verses of the Bible passage of John's Gospel. Do you want to read those out? And then I'll read these questions that are in the middle, and then all the answers, and then we can see if there's any talking points.
Okay, do you want me to read this bit here?
Yeah, please.
In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it.
Okay, so what on earth does this mean? Well, let's look through these questions and answers, because they're really designed to help us understand what it's all about. So, did you see how often the phrase "the word" was used? It was used 2 or 3 times right at the start. And John stresses twice the word was there in the beginning. So John wants to get that across to us pretty clearly. But who or what is the word, this word that it keeps going on about? Well, there's a few clues. So verse 1, the word was with God and was God. Verse 2, we find out that the word is a person because it says he. So it must be a person. He was there. He was with God in the beginning. And then verse 3, the word, who is God and a person, made everything. So verse 3, through him all things were made. Nothing, without him nothing was made that has been made. But John the writer, he goes further in his claims about the word. You see here it says, what difference does the word make for life? And then we have 3 bullet points from verse 4. The word is the source of life, so he made everything. The answer for life, and he brings eternal life. And I guess that makes sense if John is saying that the word is the creator, makes sense if he then brings life. And the word in this little box over here, it says word existed before time, before creation, before even the beginning. It's always been there. The word is eternal. And then this last verse, the light shines in the darkness has not overcome it. What does that mean? Well, we're given a hint here that Jesus is the light, and 2,000 years later, as we're sat here in Leyland chatting about it, his light keeps on shining. So I suppose that makes sense. The darkness hasn't stopped news of the word getting out.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's quite a lot to take in, but perhaps if we keep reading.
Yeah. You can always come back and say, look, what about this? So, well, let's turn over, let's have a look at it. And I'll tell you what, I'll read the first few verses this side, and then you can take us through the questions and answers.
Okay.
Is that all right? Okay, so verse 6, right at the top here, there was a man sent from God whose name was John. He came as a witness to testify concerning that light, so that through him all might believe. He himself was not the light, he came only as a witness to the light. The true light that gives light to everyone was coming into the world.
Okay, so you want me to read this question?
Yeah, just read through this page and hopefully it'll help us begin to understand what this is. So,
Okay,
right from the top, yeah.
John the Baptist is introduced and explained. So that's the John here mentioned in
That's right, yeah.
chapter 6.
Yeah.
So what had John the Baptist come to do? So he was sent by God to point to the coming of the light, verse 6 and 7.
Yeah.
Later in the chapter, we'll see he was the sensation of his day, the preacher in the wilderness. John the Baptist would have been all over your TV news and trending on Twitter. The government and religious leaders sent people to check him out. But John the Baptist is not the much anticipated word. Okay.
So there's a big fuss about him, and it's saying, look, if this was today, everyone would be talking about him. So much so that politicians and religious leaders, they were saying, hey, we need to find out what is this uprising? Who is this person? So that's what that's all about. John was this big stir, I guess. Yeah, we can keep reading.
And is John the Baptist the same person that wrote John's Gospel?
Yeah, good question. No, so they've got the same name. They're both called John, but there's John the Baptist, who's this, well, as it says, the witness that came to say about the word. Yeah.
Okay.
So there's that John the Baptist, and then there's John, who is the writer of the Gospel. So they're both called John, but two separate people. Yeah. Yeah, good question. Do you want to keep reading?
Yeah, and it says here that John the Baptist is not the much anticipated word, but have I missed something? Like, do we know who the word is yet?
Not yet. No. So we've got to keep turning the page to find out. We know bits and pieces about who the word is. So back over, we found out, the word was there from the beginning. It's a person, it's a he, and made everything. So we know bits and pieces about the word, but we don't know their name yet. Yeah. So you've not missed anything. So I think we're on this box here, are we?
Okay.
Yeah.
So through John the Baptist, God goes out of his way to make sure that the coming of the word is publicly known. Okay.
Yeah. So he's a bit like a big tannoy announcer. He's kind of saying, hey, it's coming. But we don't know him. We don't know his name yet. Yeah. All right.
We turn over?
Yeah. Any questions at that point? Or should we keep going?
No, I'm keep going.
Okay, why don't you read the verses this time?
Okay.
Yeah.
He was in the world, and though the world was made through him, the world did not recognize him. He came to that which was his own, but his own did not receive him. Yet to all who did receive him, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God, children born not of natural descent, nor of human decision or a husband's will, but born of God.
Okay, so let's try and work out what this means with some of these questions. So here the title is the word is snubbed. And the question, who rejected the word? Well, two groups. So in verse 10, the world, do you see that? The world did not recognize him, so didn't get who he was. But he was also rejected from his own in verse 11. So he came to that which was his own, but they didn't receive him. Now, that is language for the Jews. The word we read later was a Jew. He was a Jew, and they didn't want anything to do with him either. So he's rejected by the world and then rejected by the Jews.
And by the world, we just mean the people.
That's
in the
right.
world.
Yeah. But rejection isn't the only response, is it? So some people, they believe, verse 12, yet to all who did receive him. So it wasn't that everybody was saying no. There's lots that were, but some did receive. And they believed, to those who believed in his name. Now, those who believe, it says here, are given a unique and awesome gift. They're adopted into his family. Do you see it says he gave the right to become children of God? Does that make sense?
Kind of. So, how are they children of God? What does that mean?
So it would be like, well, for those who believe, it says, he gives them the right to become children of God. Say we jumped on the train, went down to London, and we knocked on the door of Buckingham Palace, all right, hoping Liz is in, and we say, cup of tea, yeah, and we say, all right, we're here to be part of the royal family. Well, they just, they kick you out and say, off you go back home, you're not part of this. But imagine if we went down to London and we were just, looking through the gates and thinking, oh, nice house, etc. And Liz pops on her shoes and comes outside and says, oh, Jonathan, come on inside.
Right. And
don't just come on inside, be part of our family. When we have our Christmas Day family picture or whatever, come on, we're going to adopt you. We're going to have you into our family. And actually, all of this now is yours because you're part of the family. So you'll come up to the balcony, you'll have nice meals, all the nice clothes, etc. Well, you're adopting into our royal family, and everything we have is yours. So Buckingham Palace, Balmoral, Windsor, it's all yours because you're part of our family. And what John, the writer here, is saying is all who believe, he gives the right to become children of God. So the Word is God, and he says, look, you believe in me, you can be part of my family, part of my royal family, and you're part of it. Does that make sense?
Right. So just by believing, you get the right to be part of the family.
That's what it says. Those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God. And in fact, it goes on and explains it a little bit more, because it says in verse 13, children not born of natural descent or human decision or a husband's will, but born of God. What that means is, it's not that you've suddenly been born into a religious family, or because your dad is so-and-so, you can come in, or not even because you've decided not of human decision. You can't suddenly say, I'm going to be part of God's family. You believe in who he is and his name, and he gives us the right. So going back to my silly illustration of going down to see the Queen, we can't get in there. We can't say, my dad is so-and-so. No, the Queen needs to say, look, you come part of my family.
She gives the invite.
Yeah. And this is what this is saying. The Word gives the invite to say, be part of my family. Now, we need to believe in him and trust in him. It says believe in his name, but he's the one that gives the right. And when we do, we become his children, become part of his family. Yeah. So the right to become part of God's family means that we inherit everything that is God's. Yeah. I mean, that is amazing. That's not kind of winning the lottery. That is much bigger than all of that. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Now, for the sake of filming, we're not going to keep doing the next few pages. But what I do want to do is skip towards the end of the study, where there's a double-page spread of all the verses that we'd read in this first study, which would last normally about half an hour in the pace that we're going through it, depending on how many questions John would have. But I'm going to skip towards the end and show you how I'd then finish the study. Okay, so John, over to pages 20 and 21. You'll recognise these. These are the verses that we've just read. The first 18 verses of John's Gospel.
The little bits that we've been.
That's right. Okay. Yeah, but it's all just in one big thing. And I think probably because we've gone at a fairly good pace, why don't we just both read this in our own head, just so make sure that we've got it all, and then if there's any further questions, we can ask those. Anything that we perhaps don't make sense of. So John and I would then read through that, at which point I'd say, are there any further questions to anything that doesn't quite make sense? And if John raised anything at that point, I would then try and answer those. There may be things that I say, well, we'll come on to that if we keep on reading. Or I may just say, John, you've stumped me. I'm just not sure I know the answer to that. But I know somebody who does know the answer. I'll ask them, tell you what, when I see you at work tomorrow, I'll try and give you the best answer I can get. And that's okay. We don't have all the answers, and it's okay to admit that. So at this stage, I'll say, well, John, if we were to keep reading, we'll see a glimpse of the life and times of John the Baptist before Jesus came onto the scene. But, what do you make of that? We've done a few verses. Does it make sense? What do you make of it?
Yeah, kind of. There's quite a lot to take in, isn't there? But it's really... He starts piecing the puzzle together, doesn't it? Of kind of who the Word is, who John the Baptist is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's okay if you've got questions, because, we all have questions.
It's just quite a little bit confusing. But, yeah.
We'll get there, I think, as we keep reading through, because like you say, the pieces do begin to be put together and you begin to then see a picture. And remember, we've only looked at a few verses here, but already we're beginning to see a bit of a picture take shape. Now, I guess my next question is, do you want to do it again? There's no pressure to, but if you find it helpful, I'll gladly meet again. We can do the next one.
Yeah, I'd like that. Yeah, it wasn't as weird as I thought it was going to be. It'd be good to do it again.
All right. Well, same time next week? Yeah. All right. And that's all really you're doing. You'll notice that there is a lot of reading through, and it may be that your friend isn't up to reading out loud or want to. That's fine. You just read through, and you may also be feeling, well, aren't they just listening to my voice a lot? Don't worry too much about that, because most of our friends haven't got a clue what the Bible says. So we don't want to put them on the spot and make them feel uncomfortable. Actually, for them at this early stage, they might just be prepared just to sit and listen, download the information, and then if they've got any questions, they'll ask them from there. But what you'll find, as I've been doing it with a guy for about 8 months, is the more we go through it, the more he wants to read, and the more questions he asks that are not just questions that he has thought about that don't really have anything to do with it, but are questions about what the Bible is saying. So it means that I can talk directly about Jesus, and as you work through the gospel, I can talk specifically about the cross, because the Bible is doing the work. There's a bit of a taster, but you've got your own personality, your own friends. Hey, why not? Give it a go and see what happens.